Hi everyone, I hope you are all well. First off, I just want to apologise for the lighting in this video. I've got all my curtains and blinds open and such to get as much natural lighting as possible, but it is a cloudy, gloomy, quite autumnal day here in the south of England where I am, so much so that the sun keeps on deciding to hide behind clouds and just sending my living room into darkness. So even though I've got the lights on, this video is going to go dark at times, but you know, I can't help it. It's that time of year, but there we go. So what have I been up to this week? Working, obviously, and when I've not been working, I have been obsessively reading the book I am here to review. And so much so, can I just flag up the previous book of the series that I am about to review was 300 pages shorter, and I got through it in 5 days. I had already gone past the point of where that book ended, page number wise, by day 4 of reading this book. And that book, of course, is Troubled Blood by Robert Galbrath AKA J.K. Rowling. I got my copy on the release date on Tuesday. I had to have it because of COVID and everything was going on. I pre-ordered it from Amazon rather than buying it at 9 o'clock in the morning on release date, as I usually do, going to my local Waterstones. But yeah, so because I pre-ordered it because of COVID, I decided, to stick with the pre-order and that I had done. And it arrived to me about 11:30, and I started it pretty much straight away. So I was able to get, because I booked the day off work for the release date. I know that may sound incredibly sad, but I absolutely love the strike books, so I was going to do it. So I got half a day of reading, just entirely reading away from work, and then everything else was in between work. And I got to the point where I was carrying this with me around my house everywhere I went. It was it sounds really bad, but it was just, yeah, I just really I was so, because I've waited 2 years for this book, and I was like, and even that, I said 2020, I wasn't buying any books at all in the year, but I made this my one book leeway in case it got published, because at the time of making that announcement, there was no indication that this book was going to be published. It was a couple of months later that it was announced. So this was my one book if it was published, and it was. So yes, so I have had a roller coaster of a week for emotions and such, for having a brand new book in my hands, in my house, and the fact that it was a strike novel was just icing on top of the cake. So, Troubled Blood. So this is the 5th Cormoran strike novel now, and it's pretty much going on the same, obviously, kind of formula of Cormoran and Robin, who are now partners in the a detective agency the Cormoran set up, have been presented a case and they investigate the case. But this is a different case than anything that Cormoran's ever done before. This is a cold case. He is in Cornwall visiting family when a woman called Anna comes up to him in the pub and says, "You're Cormoran strike, aren't you?" And basically just lets him know that her mother disappeared 40 years previously, and she wants to start looking into what happened to her. There's issues with her family and how they feel about the case and such, and she's had so many questions for so many years. She was only about a year old when her mother disappeared, and she wants to be able to find answers if there are answers there. And she gives them 1 year to find those, and this covers that year. So along with that being the main case that they're taking on, there are also about 3, maybe 4 other cases that they're looking into with other subcontractors, and Barclay is back, yay, so to investigate those. And we've got a new office manager called Pat, who I really liked. So yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's mainly about this case of Margot Bambra, who disappeared when she from her place of work. She was a doctor. She had her day working. She left to go to meet a friend, and she never turned up at the pub where she was meeting a friend, which was not far from her practice, her place of work, and she was never seen or heard from again. And that is what this book is about. Now, it is 940 pages, so 3 pages more than the previous book, as I said, and my God, it was amazing. So much so, and I'm going to say this, it's topped Career of Evil for me for the best strike novel, and even bigger, I think it's now my favourite JK novel. I think it's topped Half-Blood Prince, which is a big deal for me. So, what was it about this book? I think she has it's her most complex, her most intricate novel that she has done. Now, previously, I kind of said something similar about Lethal White, but Lethal White was very different because, as I described in my review for that, it's like mold, because you get like a little dot here, a little dot there, a little dot there, and then it just spreads, and then it all meets in one, and you realise that things that you never thought were connected the entire time. And this one, because it's a cold case, the ways of going about things are very different, and it doesn't help the fact that when Cormoran starts looking into the investigation previously, there were 2 investigations previously. The initial one, when Margot disappeared, which was headed by a guy called Talbot, and then a second one not too long after by an inspector called Lawson. Now, Talbot, at the time that he was investigating this, was having a mental health crisis, and he ended up having a complete breakdown. And we come across his notes and such, and it's all very, very odd, to the point where he thought it was to do with supernatural elements. And so trying to decode his notes is a big task, so it's good that they've got a year basically to figure this out. And Lawson very much wanted to not brush it off, but kind of go, well, that was investigated and we thought it was that, and it was proved not to be that, so there's nothing there, kind of thing. But in some ways he did uncover a few things, but not enough to actually give Cormoran and Robin much to go on, because he had seen Talbot's notes and such and kind of went, well, that's a garbled mess of a man who's having a nervous breakdown, and I'm not going to go and decode it. So it's kind of Cormoran and Robin have to kind of bring those 2 together and do their own investigation on top of that. The stuff with Talbot, though, I found absolutely fascinating, and just like she always does, it's that thing where it's right in front of your face and she hides it so well in such an intricate way that you cannot possibly see it. Like with Lethal White, when she had people guess the name of the book by playing hangman with them, and when you know the book and the outcome and everything that happens, she's basically going, here's the answer. And once again, she's done it kind of on the cover, and on the hard copy, on the front of the hard copy, there's this. It's a clock, which is in Hampton Court, which is mentioned in the book, and it's right there. You can't see it, but it's right there. You know, it is astonishing what she has done with this book. I really think this is her standout book for me. I loved especially that I had said in the previous review and for Lethal White that was very much a Robin book, because it you know, had a lot of stuff for Robin and etc. And this book does have a lot of stuff for Robin too, but for me, this is a Cormoran book. And I kid you not, he made me cry probably at least 10 times reading this book. I actually felt concerned that my neighbours were going to like knock on my door and go, "Are you okay?" Because I was either squealing, I was crying, I was yelling at my book for things that were happening. I've basically been on an emotional roller coaster this week thanks to this book. But I especially want to give, big pro for there's actually a wedge of chapters. In the previous book, Lethal White, I said standout specific is chapter 55. In this one, it's chapter 55 again, but also chapters 39 through to 44. That block of 5 chapters is a tour de force of writing, and I felt every single thing in those chapters. I want to stand up and applaud her for writing this book. I am not just talking because I love J.K. Rowling. I love her writing. I love these characters and everything. It's about the writing, the quality. And there was this absolutely astonishing bit where an Indian doctor who's in his 80s was talking about Margot. It was one of her colleagues, and he's in his 80s talking about partition in India, in India, and how he's talking about the way that Margot would brush off anyone of colour who was a rapist and torturer, but she would fully talk in depth about a white man killing. She says something like, white men who murder children for the sake of religion, or something like. I don't have the specific wordings. I don't have the page reference at hand, but I was just like, Jake, that I understood Margot and the way she saw the world so clearly just by a line, and to do that is genius. For the twists and turns of this was genius. The fact that she pulled the rug out from underneath me when everything was revealed, I was so taken aback by it. She had to kind of drop the mic moment as well near the end of the book, but I was stood up applauding like, yes, queen, yes, I love it. But overall, obviously, being somebody who reads a lot, the writing is key, and what she did with the writing in this book is astonishing to me. I as I said, I think this is her best book she has ever written. I am so taken aback by this. I am so looking forward to this becoming the drama and stuff that we're going to see, stuff that Tom and Holiday are going to act out. I really hope they do it like a 4-part like they did with Lethal White, because that gave the story room to breathe, and this story needs room to breathe. And I'm really excited going forward. And like I said, I burst into tears like 10 times, and I regret nothing. I regret nothing of all the emotions I went through and all of the things that I fell for. But yes, I am absolutely floored by this. Absolutely floored. And I can only sing praises for her for what she has done with this bit of work. And the fact that she's written this, because Talbot believed that Margot was a possible victim of a serial killer called Creed, and there is a lot of emphasis on Creed and because of his psychology, and obviously because they have to try and decode Talbot's notes during a mental breakdown where he's constantly referring to Creed. They constantly have to kind of go back to him and such. The way that she constructs him, the way that she builds this monster through third-person accounts and biographies and such that they've managed to get a hold of, and the image of this person you build up in your head, and then when we actually get to see him closer to the end of the book. I'm not going to say how or why, because, you know, spoilers. And that doesn't mean that he was involved with Margot's stuff either, because there's a whole other possible killing stuff that gets investigated as well. There's a lot of stuff being investigated in this, not just Margot. So yeah, when we get to see him, it's like the man versus the myth kind of thing. And it, you know, just kind of says, don't believe everything you see. And you kind of get that also with everything you read, sorry. And you kind of get that also with, you could say, Cormoran himself and Charlotte and his brother Al, his father, because they're in a way a kind of a celebrity status, as it were, for very, very different reasons. But it kind of links back to that. I have to say also, I really, really adored Cormoran's growth in this book, because he goes through so much in this book. I just wanted to hug him all the time and look after him, but you know, he needed to do some things in order to move on. And he and Robin's relationship really developed more on a much deeper level, which I loved to read. I need to go back and reread this, but actually I've got the audiobook as well, which I haven't started yet. I'm going to start it tomorrow to listen to while I'm working, because I find listening to audiobooks and dramas and such really great whilst especially in lockdown, to listen to whilst I'm working. And so that's going to be my my book to listen to for the week. But I really think this is a masterpiece. This is a whole nother level step up from anything she has written before. It completely immersed me. I wanted to fall head straight into this world, and the fact that I was obsessively kind of carrying this around everywhere with me in my house when I'm the only one in my house, so it's not possibly going to be moved, you know, all week. I think that kind of shows what impact it had on me. And I want to thank her for writing it. I am floored by her, by what she has produced, by what she's done in this book for various characters who live in my heart and my soul. I want to thank her. But anyway, enough of me gushing. I better actually read some of this to you. So this is 122 pages. Sorry, 123 pages is where I'm starting on. It doesn't look very far in the book, but bear in mind this is nearly 1,000 pages long. So this is Strike and Robin have been basically commissioned, as it were, by Anna Bamborough to look into her mother's case, and this is them actually walking to where the practice was in 1974, and kind of playing it out, as it were, or at least trying to get their bearings on what the road was like, the conditions of the evening she went missing, that kind of thing, just walking through the case. So I'm only going to read part of it. It's going to be a few pages that I'm going to read, but this is only part of them walking through it, because it goes on for a long time, this. Okay. Am I late? She called as she approached. No, said Strike, I was early. She joined him, still holding her umbrella, and looked up at the tall multi-storey building of brown brick with large metal frame windows. It appeared to house offices, but there was no indication of what kind of businesses were operating inside. It was right there, said Strike, pointing at the door at number 29, the old St. John's medical practice. They've remodeled the front of the building, obviously. There used to be a back entrance, he said. We'll go round and have a shifty in a minute. Robin turned to look up and down St. John's Lane, which was a long, narrow, one-way street bordered on either side by tall, multi-window buildings. It's very overlooked, commented Robin. Yep, said Strike. So, Let's begin with what Margot was wearing when she disappeared. Oh, I already know, said Robin. Brown corduroy skirt, red shirt, knitted tank top, beige Burberry raincoat, silver necklace and earrings, gold wedding ring, carrying a leather shoulder bag and a black umbrella. You should take up detection, said Strike, mildly impressed. Ready for the police records? Go on. At 6:15 on the 11th of October 1974, only 3 people are known to be inside this building. Margot, who was dressed exactly as you describe, but hadn't yet put on her raincoat. Gloria Conti, who was the younger of the 2 receptionists, and an emergency patient with abdominal pain, who'd walked in off the street. The patient, according to hasty notes Gloria took, was called Theo ? In spite of the male name and Dr. Joseph Brenner's assertion that he thought the patient looked like a man, and Talbot trying hard to persuade her that Theo was a man dressed as a woman, Gloria never wavered in her assertion that Theo was a woman. All the other employees had left before 6:15, except Wilma the cleaner, who hadn't been there at all that day, because she didn't work Fridays. More of Wilma later. Janice, the nurse, was here until midday, then making house visits the rest of the afternoon and didn't return. Irene, the receptionist, left at 2:30 for a dental appointment and didn't come back. According to their statements, each of which were corroborated by some other witnesses, the secretary, Dorothy, left at 5:10, and Dr. Gupta at 5:30, and Dr. Brenner at 5:45. Police were happy with the alibis that all 3 gave for the rest of the evening. Dorothy went home to her son and spent the evening watching TV with him. Dr. Gupta attended a large family dinner to celebrate his mother's birthday, and Dr. Brenner was with the spinster sister he shared his house with. Both Brenners were seen through the sitting room window later that evening by a dog walker. The last registered patient, a mother and child, were Margot's, and they left the practice shortly before Brenner did. The patients testified that Margot was fine when they saw her. From that point on, Gloria is our only witness. According to Gloria, Theo went into Margot's consulting room and stayed there longer than expected. At 6:15, Theo left, never to be seen at the practice again. A police appeal was subsequently put out for her, but nobody came forward. Margot left no notes about Theo. The assumption is that she intended to write at the consultation the following day because her friend had now been waiting for her in the pub for a quarter of an hour, and she didn't want to make herself even later. Shortly after Theo left, Margot came hurrying out of her consultation room, put on her raincoat, told Gloria to lock up with the emergency key, walked out in the rain, put up her umbrella, turned right, and disappeared from Gloria's sight. Strike turned and pointed up the road towards a yellow stone arch of ancient appearance which lay directly ahead of them, which means that she was heading in that direction towards the 3 Kings. For a moment, both of them looked towards the old arch that spanned the road, as though some shadow of Margot might materialise. Then Strike ground out his cigarette underfoot and said, "Follow me." He walked the length of number 28, then paused to point at a dark passageway the width of a door, called Passing Alley. "Good hiding space," said Robin, pausing to look up and down the dark vaulted corridor through the buildings. "It certainly is," said Strike. "If someone wanted to lie in wait for her, this is tailor-made. Catch her by surprise, drag her up here, but after that it gets problematic." They walked along the short passage and emerged into a sunken garden area of concrete and shrubs that lay between 2 parallel streets. The police searched this whole garden area with sniffer dogs. Nothing. And if an assailant dragged her onwards through there, Strike pointed to the road that ran parallel to St. John's Lane, onto St. John's Street, it would have been well nigh impossible to go undetected. The street's far busier than St. John's Lane. And that's assuming a fit, tall 29-year-old wouldn't have shouted or fought back. He turned to look at the back entrance. The district nurse sometimes went in by the back rather than going through the building waiting room. She had a little room to the rear of the building where she kept her own stuff and sometimes saw patients. Wilma, the cleaner, sometimes went out the back door as well, otherwise it was usually locked. "Are we interested in people being able to enter or leave a building through a second door?" asked Robin. "Well, not especially, but I want to get a feel of the layout. It's been nearly 40 years. We've got to go back over everything." They walked back through the passing alley to the front of the building.
we've got one advantage over Bill Talbot, said Strike. We know the Essex butcher turned out to be a slim and blonde, not the swarthy, thick-set person of gypsy-ish appearance. Theo, whoever she was, wasn't Creed, which doesn't necessarily make her irrelevant, of course. So there you go. So that explains exactly where, well, you know, from the police notes, what kind of happened the night that Margot disappeared, what they're up against. They've got 40 years of stuff to go through and they have to go over every tiny little detail, which is why this book is so chunky. But my God, I enjoyed every second of it. I thought it was compelling. The characters were great. The development of Cormoran and Robin, but especially Cormoran, was wonderful. It took me on an emotional roller coaster. It pulled the rug out from beneath my feet, and damn, that ending. Holy cow. That was just, I was floored by all of this. As I said, I think it's not only the best Cormoran strike, so Career Evil has been top for me ever since it got published. That has now moved down to second place, so Troubled Blood is number one. I think it's also JK's best book, and I think it's my favourite of her books. She did good. She did good. Now, as I said, the audiobook I also got the same day. I pre-ordered it off Audible, but I haven't listened to it yet. But I'm going to do that from tomorrow, and I'm sure it's going to be great. Robert Glenister's audiobooks of the Strike novels are absolutely fantastic. I recommend all of them. I will put the link to Troubled Blood specifically in the description of this review. I would say, obviously, just as I'd said in previous ones, because of character development, you need to really have read the previous Strike books to know exactly relationships and links of people. But at the same time, because it is a standalone case, obviously compared to other previous cases, you can read the case as it is singular, but I would say read all the others. And actually in this one, we get not only characters who we've known throughout the series of books, you know, return and such. We also got the return of Barclay from Lethal White, and a little cameo of Izzy from Lethal White, who was involved. She was a family member involved in the case for Lethal White, and Barclay was part of the investigation team. He's now a subcontractor of the agency. I love Barclay. I think he was a great addition to Lethal White and also to Troubled Blood. So, would I read this again? Hell yes, I am going to read this multiple times. Would I recommend this to anyone? Yes, I would. Absolutely anyone who I could think of, because my God, it was fabulous. Would I read more of J.K. Rowling's books? Well, what do you think? The fact that I'm wearing a Hogwarts, you can't see, but it's the Hogwarts crest, hoodie, you know that I love JK, and this was just astonishing. I am so proud. I'm proud of JK for writing this book. I am so happy that she wrote it and I can enjoy it, and I want to thank her for that, for everything. I love her. I love her Strike novels, especially. I mean, good Strike novels allowed her to go to a place completely unconnected, obviously, to Harry Potter and the Wizarding World and all stuff like that, and just write from her heart and her soul. And not that I'm saying she didn't write from her heart, from her soul before, but it's something different. And I love that. You can feel her love for what she's doing as you read it, and to immerse myself in that and feel that same kind of love and appreciation is wonderful to me. So thank you, JK, for writing this. So that's my thoughts on Troubled Blood by Robert Galbrath AKA J.K. Rowling. Have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comments box below, or give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely up to you. I'll let you decide. And of course, I've already announced the next books that I'm reading next, now that I've finished Troubled Blood. So my next book will be Period by Emma Bartlett. So I'll be back with my thoughts on that as soon as I'm done. All right, guys. Bye.